Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
Flying it, thanks. And first of the season, of course. Lots to get into. We're going to talk a little bit about Ulster's new signing, the United Rugby Championship obviously getting up and running very shortly. And I know you want to touch on Geordie Barrett's non-red card as well, and the possible implications of that. But we might start off with the rugby story that's dominated the headlines over the last week or so, Quinny. Every day almost a new headline. From the fallout from the women's Interpros, an RFU investigation into the facilities now that Connacht were forced to train in. It feels it's like, if you step back from it, it's almost not a conversation that's been pursued in relation to how poor the facilities were per se, rather than the bigger point that's to be made here about, and I see one of the headlines in one of the papers this morning saying, for a quote from one of the players from during the week saying that treat us better and we'll play better. And it feels like it kind of boils down to that.
Yeah, it's like, it was unacceptable what happened. I just find it so difficult to comprehend that situation, that they would be subjected to those kind of facilities. What baffles me more is that if you look at the Camogie and the ladies football teams in the last number of weeks, they've all been able to tug out in dressing rooms and play in Croke Park and prepare properly for matches. And for ladies rugby teams to be subjected to this situation when at either end of the ground in Energia Park there's two clubhouses, there's two sets of dressing rooms there. I'm just baffled as to why they wouldn't have been let use the dressing rooms in an orderly fashion and maybe kind of police that in a way that, you know, teams are not mixing together. There's at least two dressing rooms in each clubhouse at either end, probably more, 4 dressing rooms in each, I think, from my history of tugging out in Wesley or in Bechtov's changing facilities and whatever about putting pop-up tents outside in derelict areas where people are having to tug out or prepare outside. I think just why wouldn't they be let into dressing rooms? Why aren't they allowed to have a shower after the game? I don't think anyone from the HSC or any government officials would have been clamping down on that. They say it's because of the amateur status, but the Camogie players and the GA players in both men's and women's are all amateur players as well, and they can use dressing rooms and showers. I just think it's shocking what happened. I know it won't happen again, and in fairness, all the ladies involved have spoken about it, and they've all said, look, it's not going to happen again, but it should never have happened. You know what I mean? It should never have happened in this situation, and it was shocking to see the way they were treated last weekend.
Yeah, I think the word elite is what they use to get around that sort of, is it amateur, is it professional, and you call it elite, and surely it fits under that banner. And I don't know, look, it does feel as if the chat about the facilities is just an avenue in to have a bigger conversation about attitudes and mentalities and stuff, and look, it will play out and we'll see what comes out of the RFU investigation. The big signing of the week, Quinny, it's a lot of positive response here from Ulster fans. Dwayne Vermeulen has Dwayne Vermeulen World Tour has landed itself in Belfast, and it will, at least when he wraps up with the South African team over the next few weeks. 35, obviously, that's the one sort of caveat maybe in all this, but do you just forget about all that stuff? He's a starting 8 for the box and that's good enough?
Yeah, he's one for the here and now, isn't he? It's not for the future, really. I think, obviously, when you bring in a player at that age, there's a couple of things you want immediately. You want impact. You want him to perform straight away in the big games, in European games, in knockout stages, in the league towards the end of the season. But you also want him to bring on younger players and inspire people around him. And, I probably experienced that. I don't think we ever signed anyone at that age in Munster, but we had guys coming towards the end of their career. Jim Williams is probably one that jumps out, where he's a bit of a veteran when he comes to us, plays brilliantly, but is a great leader, captain, kind of lifts people around him. John Langford, a few times, he signed twice for Munster. It's signing overseas players isn't just about, no matter what age they are, isn't about Adrian just getting performance out of them, and then them jumping in the car and going back to wherever they're living and taking the wages and doing a good professional job. I think you want more out of them. You want them to, bring on academy guys. You want people to look at the way they train, prepare, their attitude, their mental strength. And he's an incredible amount of experience. So that will do Ulster the world of good. It's not a long-term situation because of his age. If you look at, and that's the only negative you can take out of it. But from an Ulster point,
yeah, go on.
Yeah,
what are they getting, Quinny? What sort of a player is he?
Well, from an Ulster point of view, they're getting an incredibly powerful, athletic, ball-playing number 8. Something they've lacked. We've spoken for a long time now about that little bit of physical grunt, that ability to dominate teams up front, to, maybe be on the front foot as regards the physical stakes. He's not going to solve all their problems. They've lacked ball carriers for a long, long time now, and it's probably 10 years we're speaking about this. Ulster, when they're on the front foot and they're retaining ball, they're very dangerous. They play with pace, tempo. They're a great side to watch. But if you get in amongst them, stop their maul, put pressure on their breakdown, physically take them on, that's where the question marks have arisen over the years. So someone like Dwayne Vermeulen, he's obviously his biggest strength is he's a ball carrier and he's an offloader and he can put people into little gaps and pockets. If Dwayne Vermeulen runs at you, if you're not on the money physically against him, he's going to knock you over. That in turn attracts people to make those tackles to him. And he's going to give him the hard yards, the wet, mucky conditions throughout the winter. And he's a really powerful ball carrier, but he's someone who can break up mauls as well. He's so physical. He can. You watch him for South Africa, that desire to get in amongst opposition teams when they're trying to maul. So they're getting a great player here. Let's just really hope that he comes after the November internationals, that he's fresh and he's fit and he doesn't pick up any injuries, and they get a bit of luck with this guy, because it's an incredible signing. It's a brilliant signing, and it's exactly what they need. They need a lift up in Ulster. A lot of good young players coming through, a lot of talent that needs to be nurtured, minded, looked after in the next couple of years, and they'll have a big impact in Irish rugby. But like I say, the area there's always question marks and is up front, and that bit of power, that bit of aggression and that bit of physical presence that sometimes they lack.
About Quilly there, just the young lads coming through, and I think that's evident in Ulster. But I suppose with him coming in, how important is it, I suppose, that he does sort of develop them and sort of having that experienced head there? That can nearly be as important in the game.
Yeah, big time, Aisling. It's so important. You look at someone like Robert Balakoon, who is a great prospect, James Hume, Greg Jones, Matthew Ray, these guys who are probably just starting out in their professional careers. I know they've played for a year or two with Ulster, but they're guys who can lean on him for a little bit of experience. And just, it's amazing. The presence of someone like that in around your training group and in your dressing room can have a really positive influence, particularly if things are going wrong, and if they lose a couple of matches or if somebody makes a mistake. He's been through the mill for Vermeulen. He's, won a World Cup. He's performed consistently at test level. Was in Japan, standout player in Super Rugby when he played there, played in Toulon. So I think you can learn so much off guys like this, because he's an elite player who's played at the top level consistently, and nothing really phases him. I suppose when you're 18 and a half stone and 6'5",
it helps.
It helps. It helps the situation. And but it's young players like that who he can, and I'm sure Ulster will try and use his experience. I'm sure he'll be vocal in team meetings. But the reality for Vermeulen here is he's gone into an Ulster side that domestically, in the league, they'll win 70-80% of their matches. In Europe, they'll be, getting into quarterfinals. They'll be thereabouts. It's just that lateral part of the competitions that they've struggled in the last couple of years. And maybe he'll be a bridge that'll maybe get him one step more. I'm not saying he's going to make him win trophies, but, they will get better this year as a group. The Ulster team, they've, shown a lot of promise, but consistency hasn't been one of them. So, people will probably say, well, what can he do vocally to improve other guys? But honestly, it's a massive part of improving the standards about the way they train, the attitudes, the mental strength, all that kind of stuff. And just his presence out in the field will give him a huge lift, that guys can run off him and, replicate what he does and try and, there's a lot of good back rows there. Timony is a very aggressive player. Jordy Murphy, brilliant player over the years for Ireland, Leinster and Ulster. Greg Jones, very promising. Sean Reedy. So they've a lot of abrasive players, but it's that end product of being really kind of aggressive, ferocious against teams that, if you play Ulster, you'll fancy your chances in the last couple of years, taking them on up front and, mauling against them, running hard at them and physically dominating them. So he's not going to fix every problem they have, but I'm sure he'll improve things. And if they get a full team out in the field, with Henderson playing and Vermeulen at 8, Reedy, Timony, these guys, now they've 4 or 5 ball carriers that can really be pivotal for them. So he's a brilliant signing. Again, as we said at the start, it's a short-term situation, but if he plays well for Ulster for 2 years and brings them up to another level, well, it'll be well worth it.
Yeah, I wondered if all those names you mentioned, they take a seat now and he comes in, and they could have done a Carberry. It might be a conversation we'll come back to again, Quinny, but they might have done a Carberry with like a Deegan, a Conan or a Doris. And look, I know that raises other questions for Leinster, who I'm certain wouldn't want to part with any of those, but the stocks are high. Come here, we've only a few minutes left, so I wanted to you wanted to touch on the Jordy Barrett red card from last week, which was pretty blatant. And I've seen the ruling and I've read the ruling, and it doesn't make a whole pile of sense to me, I have to say, but it's been rescinded.
Yeah, well, it was in the Australia game. It was 2 weeks, nearly 2 weeks now at this stage. They played Argentina last week, and he played in that game, Jordy Barrett. But there was, I've been thinking about this for the last couple of weeks. Sometimes it's very rare that you're going to get sent off and it be rescinded, and there's a blatant mistake now with the TMO and the time you have in the rugby field to adjudicate in these decisions. It does happen that things are missed and that after games players are cited and it should have been a red card and they receive a suspension, but it's kind of rare, and it kind of makes a mockery of the laws really and it's not, Jordy Barrett is a phenomenal player, but he goes up to catch a high ball and propels himself through the air, and at the last minute extends out his foot and hits Corabetti straight in the face with his boot and gets a red card during the game. And then you go to a panel and they ruled that they rescinded and said it shouldn't have been a red card. We talk about what the Razzie Erasmus video and making life hard for referees and stuff like this. This is kind of up there as bad because it was a blatant red card.
Well, they say, Quinny,
it wasn't intentional.
The
it was
committee,
reckless.
Anybody check it out online, it's pretty reckless. His leg wasn't exactly straight out, but it was as straight as you can get, and certainly the studs were right in Corabetti's face. But the Judicial Committee chairman said that it was neither dangerous nor reckless. He legitimately went up in the air to collect a high ball, and when in trying to regain his balance on the downward trajectory, his boot inadvertently made contact with his opponent's head. Like, you can't legitimately describe that as inadvertent when we talk about the responsibility of one player to another.
I don't agree with any of that, and it's blatant for you to see it, that he goes up and the knee propels up in the air and it looks like he has the ball, and then at the last minute he extends his foot out for it. That's nothing to do with regaining your balance.
No.
Okay, it might be a technique that he's used to doing, and again, I don't think it was intentional. He didn't intentionally, try to kick the player in the face, but it was reckless, and we need to discourage that. I think the pressure that Ian Foster and New Zealand Rugby put under the judicial stanza and these panels it has an influence on it, and the red card should have been left. He should have missed the game against New Zealand. I wouldn't say that he would have deserved any sort of a long ban for it, but it was a red card, and that being rescinded kind of makes a mockery of the laws. And we've seen several of those incidents here in the Northern Hemisphere in the last couple of years where there were red cards straight away, and there was no questions asked, and players received suspensions after it. How in God's name in 2021, when players red carded like that, and it's clear and obvious he boots the player in the face, whether he meant it or not, it's reckless, and the red card should have stood. So it just really frustrates me that, and again, people will probably say, well, I'm nobody to talk maybe from the way I played, but the reality of it is people watch these, and kids watch it, and parents watch it, and we don't want to kind of allow, it's one of these bugbears. I don't know why you show your studs when you're jumping up for a ball. I've never done it, and I don't think there's a need for that. And I think it's something, again, that needs to come out of the game. But it just kind of smacks in the face of the laws that are there to get this overturned.
Yeah, I think as well what you said about the kids watching on, I don't believe it was intentional personally, but I do think you need to be more aware. And that was probably the main problem for me, that he came down knowing that there was a player there, to be more aware of what you're doing, because as people are watching on, you don't want them picking up this sort of thing.
And it's not the first time that he's done this, so he needs to stop doing that, because if he kicks the player and the studs go into his eye, and then the player loses an eye or something, well then, is it a red card? Does it stay? It's just, look, again, it's nothing personal. He's a wonderful player, but I just think it's crazy how this stuff can go on in the Southern Hemisphere, where I just don't think that would happen here in the Northern Hemisphere. Yeah. If a player accidentally, an arm comes up and he gets a red card in a game, and there's mitigation that was missed or something, that's fine. But look, there's so many moving parts in rugby nowadays. I know it frustrates people. The other thing that I just think is absolutely ludicrous is you're sent off and you can bring another player on after 20 minutes. It was trialled here last year in the Rainbow Cup. A red card is a red card, and that's the way it should be. And I hope to God that situation doesn't come in throughout the world. It's going on in the Rugby Championship at the moment now, and I think it's a joke. It's just people giving out that a game of rugby is ruined. It's just the reality of it. If these high tackles and stuff, of course, player getting sent off early and there's no intention in it, but bringing a player back on after 20 minutes is a joke to me. Yeah,
it's mad stuff, strong stuff. Quinny, we'll talk to you this day next week. I presume we'll be previewing the United Rugby Championship. Good man.
Cheers. Thanks.